Hope you are all doing well. We've got a couple of days as the time of this filming until the B test for the AMCs. Just wanted to cover a couple of things. I did want to get to a suggested thing that you might want to study for the B test. That will come a little bit later in the video. I will go to my laptop and show you some things, and it's just a guess about something you might want to observe. So stay tuned for that. Starting off with a quote, because that's what we do around here. We do quotes. There is no unlived life or alternate reality where everything went right. There is only here and now and what you are going to do with it. So that's an unknown source. Various people have said similar things. I've said something similar in a past video as well. But you kind of think, oh, let's go back to the A test and revisit and dwell upon it. No, that's gone now. Learn from it, of course, but don't dwell on it. Don't let the emotions of however you performed, whether it was at your expectations or not, affect you as you go into the B. The B is rather another chance. It's another test. It's a facing of adversity that you get to subject yourself to, which all of these things help us to grow as people and as competitors on the contest. So, other quote then from Seneca. He was a Stoic philosopher. I've upgraded the quote for modern day language. No human is more unhappy than one who never faces adversity, for they are not permitted to prove themselves. And that's what it is you get to go do. You get to go face a little bit of adversity, and while he was probably not talking about competitions in particular, it is a form of adversity for those of you who have been preparing for it. And so that's what it is. It's your chance to prove what you're capable of. You get a second shot. Maybe you didn't like how the A test went, but the A test is gone. It's in the rear view, but we are going to look at it in a moment because I want you to observe a few things as I mentioned before. My cutoff guesses, these are ranges of where it might be. I think the cutoff for the 10A is going to be around a 99 or 96. Low end here, I would not be surprised if my low end gets knocked off and it's a little bit lower than that. I would be surprised if it was higher than 103.5 as a cutoff. For the 12A, I'm less certain. I would say 87 is probably safe. Probably. Again, these are just guesses. Understand that. It's just a guess. Could be wrong. I don't think it could even get lower than 80. I have no idea, right, on that one as well. But some notes on the A. It felt different. And to be honest, I liked it. I like getting kind of hit in the mouth, if you will, figuratively speaking. You go into a battle and it's not what you're expecting, and you kind of get derailed right from the get-go. By the way, a note quickly on my solutions. They're my solutions. They're just what I came up with to solve. I am not God's gift to mathematics. I am decent. Most of the members in my server, many of the ones that watch my channel, are better than I am, and they had better insights and things like that. I just explain things fairly well, and I'm competent and capable. But one of the commenters on the 1 through 5 video mentioned that you can do a modular arithmetic trick on problem number 1, and I'll point that out in a minute also. So don't be afraid. Read some of the comments down below. A lot of you have great ideas and suggestions, and I love it when you do so. People can learn from that as well. So it felt different. It felt like, oh my gosh, this question's weird. Why am I getting this in this spot? We had a number of things like that. And I like that discomfort. I like that feeling of, wow, this is harder than I was expecting, because you have to respond in that moment. If I was to do well on something that everyone did well on and found easy, well, so what? Everyone found it easy and did well. If you do well on something that other people have found trouble with, I feel better about my result. Or even maybe you don't do as well as your best score performance, but relative to how others or perhaps yourself did on the A, right? Then you might feel like, hey, this was a hard test, and maybe I did pretty good, all things considered. Yeah, I didn't score as high as I mock. For you perhaps. For me, like last year on the 10A and 12A, it was pretty easy, I felt like, for me. But then this year, I was slowed down quite a bit. I didn't feel comfortable a lot of the time. And I like that they're trying to make it uncomfortable. It's not supposed to be a test where you memorize all the rules, all the formulas, and boom, presto, you're getting your Amy qualification. They like to keep the community, in my opinion, a little bit unsettled, that you don't know what to expect. There are so many concepts that could appear, and it's very hard to prepare for all of them. So what do you do as a student when you get hit with a few questions that are outside the comfort zone? They're not like maybe past questions that you faced, not like past AMCs. How do you respond to the adversity? And I feel like to an extent the test measures us on that. So there was lots of optimizing. Again, more on that in a moment when I give a little bit of an analysis looking at the test. And I want to, again, point something out that you might benefit from. It seemed to take longer per question. I was taking more time on them than I usually do. There's a lot of things that you can make mistakes on. Questions needed more care in order to avoid making a silly mistake. I think that was very true on this test. And those of you who didn't take it because you're trying to run at your normal speed, you didn't make the in-test adjustments that you needed, your spider sense didn't go off, and you weren't able to tell, hey, this is kind of weird. I should be careful, tread carefully, take an extra minute to make sure I've optimized least value, greatest value correctly. Okay? There was some abnormal concepts. Problem number 2 for both tests being, it wasn't super hard, but a very long paragraph, and you wanted to it's kind of making you slow down a little bit and think about things. Strategies for that? As I said in my last video, you might want to skip stuff that you don't like the look of. Just skip it for a little bit. You're going to come back to it a little bit later. But don't forget, it's about matchups. If there's a question that, for whatever reason, you know some more obscure topic that other people don't know, and that shows up in problem 15 or 19 or something like that, and you can go take that one out right now, go take out all the things you love the look of on 1 to 20. This is a suggested strategy. It's kind of something I've been thinking about on it. If they're putting things that drain your time, I call them a time sink. It's a sink for the time to go away. Maybe if you can dodge those and just go find the questions that look great. Like on the AMC 10 questions 3, 4, and 5, they still took more time, but they weren't terribly hard to process. You had to be careful. They could make sillies. I'm not saying everybody got it right. But compared to question 2, it looked like it was going to take longer in my mind. So I would suggest that you go hunting for the concepts, the presentation of the problem. You look at it and go, I've seen quite a few things that looked a little bit like this. Let me just do this one really quick. I think that's great. People talking about different order of questions. International had a different order, slightly different than the domestic version. In addition, people who were domestic and had a printed copy of the test, because most centers will let you print it, the questions were not in the same order as on the screen. And so I like that they did that. I think it makes it harder for people who might be prone to cheating. I did not see any announcements about them changing the orders in any capacity, but I saw several comments on my video. Isn't this question 14 or wasn't that? And then we realized what was going on. I have a hunch they might be doing that to draw information. How many people had the answer that would have been right had it been written this way? Because that might indicate they got answers from a different source or something like that. So I don't know, it's just a guess. Maybe they were doing something like that, but whatever, they're doing more to help prevent any kind of cheating on the test. So that's about it. My solutions, we're gonna get to the other part of the video, but for this part of it, my solution should be out hopefully at 8 a.m. Eastern. I can't promise that. Things come up, things happen, there's technical issues and stuff like that. They can't be released earlier. People International are taking the test. This last time, a group in India started the test at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so at that point, we can now discuss them because all those students are in the test and don't have access to their phones. But any release any earlier would result in potential people getting answers before they take the test, which isn't really fair. So it's done this way to protect the test integrity. Some of you have asked, hey, do you have an answer key? I don't have an answer key. It's just my answers that I came up with, and I spoke with some people in the morning about it to confirm with them how they got it, and we kind of engineered what we thought would be correct answers. I had high confidence and I knew my answers would be correct. Otherwise, I would not have released those. So they did end up being correct, and I think you can, gain understanding from that. Let's get to the other computer now and get a look at what I'm talking about to see what that's all about. Okay, so first, I do want to go over several things from the A test that might aid you in your prep for the B. One of those things was a comment from several people down below on the 1 to 5 videos. They talked about it, and I did not think of this. Like I said, there's so many of you that are so smart and you can learn from a lot of people in my Discord server as well. Many do way better on the contest than I do. You can look at this first question, and if you know modular arithmetic, if you mod out all four terms, mod 10, basically what's the remainder when you divide by 10? This is a 1 when you divide by 10. This is a 1 when you divide by 10. The 99, we can call it -1 when you divide by 10, and the 1, you can call it 1 when you divide by 10. If you don't understand modular arithmetic, a number can be congruent to -1 mod 10, which would be that you do 10 times -1 plus 9. The remainder is actually 9. But you could also do 10 times 0 plus 9. They're both in the same what we call residue class. And so even though the remainder is 9, a remainder of 9 like this is still true about that as well. And we say that 9 is congruent to -1 mod 10. So another way to represent this remainder of 9 is with a -1. So by doing this, you observe that the first product is 1 and the second product is -1, and 1 minus -1 is 2. What that means is that whatever this number actually is, it has to leave a remainder of 2 when divided by 10, and only answer choice A did that. And so they used that technique and got it really quick. Honestly, super smart if you thought of that. It did not even cross my mind, but I thought I would point that out. Now, let's go look at, and thanks for those of you who commented. Several people did, more than one person pointed out that aspect, so they were not the only ones to think of it. Really good job on that. Let's go back and look at something now that I wanted you to observe. This is the 2018 AMC 10A. And I want you to see something in it. This is problem 11, when 7 fair standard 6-sided dice are thrown, the probability that the sum of the numbers in the faces is 10 can be written as where n is a positive integer. Then if you look over at the B test of the same year, problem 9, 2 questions away from the other one, the faces of each of 7 standard dice are labeled with 1 to 6. Let P be the probability when all 7 dice are rolled. Does it sound familiar? They do something on the test that I've observed on more than one occasion where they have thematic concepts. To my knowledge, in no other year was there a 7 dice being rolled problem. And yet in the same year on the A test and the B test, there's a version of a 7 dice being rolled problem. In fact, the A test helped you on the B test. So if you go back to the A test and look at it, the question actually asked, the sum of the numbers in the faces is 10, and you found that probability. But you go over here and look, and they also do the sum of the probability on the faces is 10, right? Or sum of the numbers in the top faces is 10. What other sum occurs with this same probability P? As a quick point for those of you preparing, all dice problems are symmetric. So since 7 is the minimum roll and 10 is 3 above 7, then what is the maximum roll? 42. What's 3 below the max? 39, and that's the answer, because of the symmetry of outcomes in dice problems. So if you had wrestled with the A test and analyzed it a little bit, when you got to this problem, you had a little bit of an edge. But that's not the main point I want to make. The main point I want to make is the theme, the fact that there was a question that was on both tests that was very similar. People say, which is easier, the A test or the B test? And the answer is they try to make it approximately the same difficulty. And they'll do some similar concepts sometimes, and they will flip a coin to decide which test that question goes. Okay, so it's supposed to be roughly the same. Does it always work out that way? No. Does that mean the cutoffs are going to be about the same? No, not really. Some years there's great disparity between the cutoffs on the 2 tests. That just means they weren't aware of what was actually hard for some students versus not, et cetera, et cetera. There's various reasons. Now, let's look at a question on the 10A that was quite unique, and look at one on the 12A that was also quite unique. It's not super unique on the 10, but question 13, 2 transformations are said to commute if applying the first. So transformations, what kind? You have a translation, a rotation counterclockwise, a reflection about the x-axis, and more importantly, a dilation. Now, there is only, to my knowledge, one other dilation of the coordinate plane problem in the AMC history. It's kind of rare, at least on AMC 10. Maybe there were others that I'm just not able to recall because my memory is not perfect, but there was a dilation of the plane problem. I will link it in the description if you would like to go practice that problem and learn from it. In fact, I think I have a video explaining how that problem works. Maybe not, or I've just taught it in a class at one point, but I recall solving it several times. So my guess is that this problem, it's just a guess. Could be wrong. Don't at me if you're like, well, that wasn't on there. That was a waste of my time. Nothing's a waste of your time. All of it is preparation, and it's just a guess. It would not surprise me at all if the B test had a transformations problem involving dilations, but possibly more transformations than just that. And considering it came up in the before 13 range, I would imagine it would be something before problem 15 on the test, which means not backbreaking difficult. There has been quite a few problems in transformations in the past where like T1, T2 and stuff, and it took a little while to go through, but it was usually just one kind of transformation, not a multiple transformations in a single problem. And again, dilations being very rare. Okay, so if I was you, I would go to chapter 19 of the Art of Problem Solving's book, volume 1, and I would study that chapter. And when you're studying chapters like these, you need to make nuanced understanding of a point, of the things that they're teaching you. So for example, up here, they've got this symmetric idea and lines of reflections. There's things that you can observe in here, like every line that connects a point to its reflected point is perpendicular to the line of reflection or the line of symmetry. And furthermore, the distances are the same. So like with point symmetry, EO is different, is congruent to OE prime, same exact length, okay? So those are like little things like that. Those are the types of things you want to note in your notes. You might want to note, for instance, that a counterclockwise rotation of 90 degrees results in negative YX, and be cognizant of those things as you head into the B test. Now, I don't note these in my small notebook because I can derive them during the test with thinking. And you can do that as well, but I would still review them to have a little bit of familiarity. Now, this aspect of the distance being the same across the point or line of symmetry. So like, for example, in the upper one, D to this line and the line to D prime is also the same length. Well, there's some things you can do with those ideas. If you go down here, I'll show you in this problem here, example 19.4, find the image of reflecting the point 4,3 in the point 2,0. And if we go and look at that, the way they did it, they have their method. But what I want to point out is you don't have to use their method. You could just go and do it in a different way where you take 4,3 and you take 2,0. And in order for the distance to be the same, what is the distance from 4 to 2 in the x coordinate? 2. So you can do the same thing and go to 0. You'll travel a distance of 2. If you do it with the 3, you went down 3 to 0, so go down 3 to here. It's like a different way of thinking of it. You could graph it, but this kind of thinking, the nuance, the idea of doing things in maybe unorthodox fashion that could create speed advantages, that's the type of stuff you want to note when you're going through the chapter. And they might not mention it, which means you might have to think about your answers afterward and ask, is there anything I can observe about this as far as alternate solve processes? Obviously, working with a tutor, you might see those things that the book might not point out at all times, but even on your own, you can see them yourself. Okay, so that's what I want to point out with the AMC 10. Let's look also at the AMC 12. A question that was very abnormal was a vector sum problem. Now, there were commenters who pointed out that this is a very common thing to do in physics, but not all of us take physics tests. I'd have never taken a physics test in my life as far as like a competition or anything like that. And I certainly haven't done physics studying in a long time, not since high school. So some people might have familiarity with it or whatnot because they're used to seeing those things. But for many people, this is very weird. And it took a little bit of time to come up with. So I found this to be abnormal. I would not be surprised to see a vector problem on the B test. You might want to review that as a topic. Now, again, it's just a guess, okay? The vectors are covered in volume 2. Maybe get that chapter out and do some review of that. The other one that might appear would be something involving like sine of 3 theta, but that's less likely, I feel like. But even that expression is pretty rare on the AMC 10. And so you might find some review of that kind of concept as well if you're studying for the AMC 12. There is no trig required on the AMC 10, but obviously some of them will give you an advantage. So that's my advice on that. The other thing you might notice as well, we talked about it in the other video, was all the optimizing problems, right? If you looked at this thing, you say, number 3, let n be the least prime number. The number here, it says, what is the least number of two-digit? What is the least value of n? And so you go over here, what is the minimum number of successive swaps? What is the least possible? There is so much optimization on these tests. You might go look for min-maxing or optimization type problems. Go search the forums. If you got Monday off for the holiday, it might be a good use of your time. I would find it very hard to believe that there was like 7 or 8 questions involving minimizing or maximizing a value as you went through the test, and it keeps going. There's other ones too. If you start with, where else was it? This question number 15, let m be the greatest integer such that. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff happening. I would recommend you go look for some more problems and practice thinking in that way, how to be careful that I've got the actual maximum or minimum value, whether you're taking the 10 or the 12, I think that would be useful. Hope you enjoyed the video. Good luck on the B test and watch for those solutions to come out.